Welcome back to another episode of The Hardcore Casual with your boy, Base the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It is appreciated. Yesterday I did say a video would drop in today. Apologies, a little bit later than I wanted it to be, but I have been slightly busy earlier on. I was in the gym. Shoulder's not really thanking me for that at the moment, but we carry on moving. Before I get started, very big shout out and congratulations to Travis J from Undefeated Podcast. He shot the pilot episode of his BBC Radio 4 new comedy show called Rum Punch. That was yesterday at the Peckham Theatre, and yeah, it was extremely funny. Big ups to him. He wrote and obviously scripted it. It was just really good, really entertaining. And shout out to KG the comedian as well. He was also involved in the project. Several other people, Eddie Nestor, few others as well. Kevin J was also down there, so big ups to all of them. And yeah, when it does drop in March, make sure you tune in. It was hilarious. Right, that being said, there was a few interesting topics that did come out over the week, so I definitely want to give my take on some of those. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I guess the first thing to talk about is Matchroom have announced a bit more of their spring schedule for the year, which I believe has gone up until the end of April, or is it somewhere in I think it's the end of April. It's finishing. So I want to talk about that very briefly. So the first fight of that schedule is on the 23rd of March, and that's headlined by Dalton Smith against Jose Chon Cepeda. And also on that card you've got Sandy Ryan against Terry Harper for the WBO welterweight championship. So pretty good, in terms of a main event. I mean, look, that's a very big step up for Dalton Smith. Jose Cepeda's only ever lost to like world level guys. Very unfortunate not to have become a world title holder. So yeah, that's a very big step up for him. And obviously on the women's side, Terry Harper versus Sandy Ryan, that's a very intriguing fight as well. Sandy, even though Terry Harper was competing at 154, Sandy Ryan is actually the naturally bigger of the two, and definitely will come down more in weight to make 147 than Terry Harper does. She pretty much was sitting at about 149 pounds when she was competing at light middle anyway. So that will be interesting to see how that one plays out. So yeah, that card in itself is pretty cool. You also had Richardson Hitchens against Lemos, and Diego Pacheco was also on that card. I'm trying to think who did Diego Pacheco supposed to be fighting? Coleman, I think that's who he's fighting. Yeah, so that card I think is taking place on the 6th of April, I think that one's taking place on the 6th of April. Not terrible. Again, there seems to be a lot of sort of like the new stars in the Matchroom stable sort of getting cards at the moment, as opposed to, I guess, like the really established names. Obviously, I know you gotta have the stars of the future. I've got to start doing their own bits and pieces, but there's those two cards. Then Jordan Gill and Zelfa Barrett, they're headlining a Manchester card, I think on the 13th of April, and Rhiannon Dixon is going to be challenging for her first world title, I think of the WBO, against Karen Elizabeth Carabajal, who's only ever lost to what's her name, Katie Taylor. So yeah, in terms of those cards, I mean, look, they're fun fights, fun matchups. And then I think the last card they're doing is another next gen. So they've got a next gen taking place in 2 weeks from now, and then this is another next gen, which I think takes place at the end of April. So I think this is the sort of the end of their roster or their schedule up until that point in the UK and the US. Now look, here's what I want to say. There's a lot of on there like decent fights in terms of like, those upcoming, but in terms of for your subscription, I've got to be honest, it's not that great. Look, a lot of the thing what was promised with the zone model and like the zone is as a whole was that you're gonna get pay-per-view quality fights as a part of your subscription. Well, Dalton Smith at this point in time is not a pay-per-view star. He could get there maybe at some point in the future, but I don't think he's at that level yet. Now him versus Jose Zepeda, very good fight for him and a very good step up, but Jose Zepeda is also not a pay-per-view level star, so that's just a regular Saturday night, Friday night fight to me. Zelfa Barrett and Jordan Gill, similar. Like Jordan Gill's obviously come back onto the scene with his very big win over Conlon sort of towards the back end of last year, so I rate him, and obviously I rate the journey very highly, but again, that is not a, you know, an event that you quote unquote hang your hat on and say, yeah, this is, you know, this is what everyone's gonna pay their money to go and see. In my personal opinion, having two quote unquote next gen cards when you've still kind of got next gen type opponents in your main events for some of the previous bouts, yeah, it seems as if almost like they're scraping the barrel at the moment. And I've seen a lot of people online complain about some of these cards and basically say, yep, well, my subscription is about to be renewed anyway, and I'm gonna cancel it because I don't feel like I'm getting sort of that top level, top draw entertainment for the money I'm having to pay. Now a lot of that is in the US more so than the UK, but I'm seeing people in the UK saying the same thing. What I will say is, look, we're getting consistent boxing week in, week out, which is what we want, and I understand that, you know, not everyone is a superstar, and sometimes you just have good trade level fights, and sometimes those are the fights where they actually end up being the best fights and you end up walking away saying, yeah, I really enjoyed that. But with that being said, it's like, where are the big names? Like, where's the big fights taking place on the UK shores or the US shores? I know there's a big influx of like the whole Saudi thing, and I'm all for the Saudi stuff. I love watching all of that, but if that means that there's gonna be basically all we're ever gonna get here is be like, you know, remember in football you used to have like the feeder clubs, and they used to do pretty okay in sort of their minor leagues, but all they were really there was just to feed their top up and coming prospects to like the big clubs of the Premier League and La Liga and all that sort of stuff. That's kind of starting to feel what these cards are feeling like. You're just going to get sort of the minnows or the people that no one really cares about on these cards, and then as soon as they hit the big time, all of a sudden then they're going to go clear maybe to Saudi or to the US or whatever, and they're just going to start getting these very low level domestic fight nights with sort of no pizzazz, no star power to them, and that's kind of what this feels like. Don't get me wrong, like I said, there's some very good matchups on there, but in terms of this being the main event, this being the draw and the attraction, I'm not really feeling it. And it's also kind of telling that not one of these cards is taking place in London, and I bet they probably realized that a London crowd would be very disapproving of some of these fights. So yeah, look, while I'm not saying that they're terrible matchups, I'm just talking about in terms of a natural, you know, that's my main event. Yeah, it's not really sitting too well with me, and from what I've seen, some of the wider public. So I do hope that by the time we get to those summer months, even if it's got to be on the Saudi dime, so to speak, that we just start to get a bit more of the star power, or at least a bit more of those, you know, the top names having their bouts, having those pay-per-view quality fights on the DAZN platform. Because so far, while this is okay, this ain't really it. Yeah, that's my take on that. Now this next segment, I'm going to kind of have it as a 2-in-1 because both, I guess, kind of lead into each other. But we're going to start off with the Ryan Garcia fiasco. Now, Ryan Garcia tweeted out that on the 20th of April, both he and Rolly Romero were going to be in, basically they were going to have their fight signed for the WBA super lightweight title. And yeah, Ryan was saying, yep, that's all, it's all in the works, like get ready. This is after he had basically, you know, opened his mouth and said, yep, Devin Haney, I want to fight you next. Then he's like, actually, no, don't worry, I'm not going to fight you because you wanted to be the A side, you're not the A side to me, blah blah blah, and so we had that. Then he ends up now looking extremely stupid because you've got Rolly Romero, who has now come out and said, well, actually, no, that's not happening at all. I'm not facing you. Your team tried to lowball me, Oscar De La Hoya or Oscar De La Fishnets or whatever we called him. Yeah, like your team's trash and blah blah blah. So that's all kind of happening, and Ryan's almost left in limbo. Like, okay, well, I thought that this was a done deal, so you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of how it is. I apologize for anyone who who thought that was going to be the case, but that's not happening at the moment. As soon as I got my fight news, I'm gonna let you know. We're still going to be on the Zone pay-per-view. Now that to me is a bit of a concern, because if he's chasing the pay-per-view model, while he might get a decent number of people come through, but it's like, well, who else is he going to be able to be pay-per-view with? Like Devin Haney, okay, you could see it. Subriel Matias, you could definitely see that from an intrigue point of view. Teofimo Lopez, yes, but he's obviously already fighting. He's going to be fighting on the 8th of February. Then you say to yourself, okay, well, who else is there? And then you think to yourself, well, the only other person he now could realistically face and put himself in an interim position to corner Rolly Romero is Ishmael Barroso. Now, don't get me wrong, I would very much be keen to see Ryan Garcia versus Ishmael Barroso. And I know it wouldn't be necessarily pay-per-view over here in the UK, but in the US, I mean, is that pay-per-view worthy? Would you fork out, I don't know what they might charge it as, $50, $65, $75, $80 to see Ryan Garcia versus Ishmael Barroso? Unless maybe the undercard was also extremely stacked. I don't know, maybe some of my American contemporaries can let me know if they'd be willing to do that. Now, like I said, I would be very interested in seeing Barroso. Like in his last, in his penultimate fight, he got screwed by Rolly Romero and Tony Weeks. And then in his last fight, he just dispatched of O'Hara Davis in a one-round destruction. So he's definitely a credible opponent, even at the advanced age of 41, who really probably looks like he's about 61. But yeah, I'd be keen to watch it, and I would definitely wouldn't mind if Ryan had that as his next opponent. But yeah, I just don't know if that's still pay-per-view worthy. So they might have to go back to the drawing board and figure out another move for that one. But I'll let you guys kind of decide that. But that kind of leads me into the second part of this, whereby, so now we have the news that Rolly Romero is actually going to be facing Isaac Cruz on the 30th of March in a, Amazon Prime pay-per-view with the PBC, which is going to be headlined by Tim Tszyu and Keith Thurman. The interesting thing about this is, well, two interesting things actually. In Australia, it's Tszyu Thurman, but in America, it's Thurman Tszyu. I think also in Australia, it's Cruz Romero, and in America, it's Romero Cruz. Or those two might be switched around. But I remember seeing a graphic where Isaac Cruz has got the A side billing over Rolly Romero, which is weird because he's the champion, and obviously he's the maybe it might be because they both fought Tank and Isaac Cruz is the one that took him the distance, so they feel like he's the bigger name. I'm not sure, but that was one interesting point about this card and this fight. The second interesting point is that you've got Tim Tszyu and Keith Thurman fighting at a catchweight, the Canelo weight of 155 pounds, with no title on the line because the WBO have refused to sanction the bout. Keith Thurman has never fought 154 pounds. He's never competed for the WBO titles, never paid a sanctioning fee for them. It's like, well, we can't in any good faith break our rules and let you compete for this belt. That in itself is hilarious to me, because I remember back in the day when they acted as if that WBO belt didn't exist when Terence Crawford held it, and now they was trying to vie to fight for that title, but you can't fight for it because you've never fought a sanctioned bout for them. But outside of that, you've got Keith Thurman that hasn't been in the ring for 2 years and has never fought above 147 pounds as a pro. I feel bad for Tim Tszyu. I mean, for him, I guess at this point, this is just kind of a little introduction to the States kind of fight, because I know the only last time he fought in the States was during, I think, COVID, when there was no one allowed to be in the arenas. So I don't think he really got fans with him like that. So he had to go back to obviously Australia and do everything there. Now he gets the chance to sort of come and build a name over here. It's just unfortunate that the name you're building against is a very past it, faded Keith Thurman, who's about 35, going to be 36 very soon, hasn't been in the ring for 2 years, has only had 2 fights, I think, in the last 5 years as a pro. All of this just reeks of desperation, and the fact that it's on pay-per-view, Prime pay-per-view, I don't know if they're going to try and charge pay-per-view over here in the UK, but I feel bad for my US contemporaries. But I 100% promise you this, if they do try to charge pay-per-view over here, there is no way I'm buying it. And if that means that I have no breakdown show to do on that Tuesday, so be it, because I'm also not going to be running around trying to find a way to find the fights either. The card itself, the rest of the card, that has some okay level matches on it. I know Sebastian Fundora is coming back on that card, his first fight back after his knockout defeat from Brian Mendoza. I'm trying to think, I know someone else fairly decent is on that card as well. But yeah, just overall, I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, this is not pay-per-view worthy. This ain't, again, I was talking about the Zone earlier and like what we're getting for the subscriptions that we're paying, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is the PBC model all over again, the same model that got kicked off on 9 different networks in the States, and you're going to try and replicate it yet again. Haven't had the opportunity, or haven't tried to build any brand new stars, haven't tried to sign any brand new talent. You're just literally wheeling out the same people left, right and center that ain't even been fighting. It'd be different if Keith Thurman had maybe been active, had a fight in the last 5-6 months to warrant a shot at a world champion. He hasn't had anything. So this literally just has to be a cash out. I'm gonna take one last beating, I'm gonna take one last payday and then bow out, because I can't see him fighting again after this. It's just horrible, quite frankly. I don't really know what else to say about it, and I need to know what the people watching the video think, because I just think this is bad all the way around, and it needs looking into. And to be honest, anyone who purchases this outside of Australia, like obviously Fox Australia, I understand if they're buying it because they're buying it for their person, they're buying it for Tim Tszyu, and I totally get that. But any American boxing fans that want to justify buying this card, like, I need the justification. I need to know why you would be so willing to part with $80, which is roughly about £55, £58 over here, for that. I need to know what the rationale is, because yeah, this ain't good, and by all stretches of the imagination, it's probably not going to get much better with PBC on Prime. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. I would be very keen to read that. I guess a bit on a side note, last but not least, I just want to touch on Teofimo Lopez was going at Eddie Hearn. I think when the announcements came for the previous announcements of the fights up until the the end of the spring, where he basically said, oh, so yeah, I can see that or I can see why the zone have like cut your budget, like soon you're going to be off the platform, like Eddie go bye blah blah blah. One thing I will say, as much as I was not happy with I guess the schedule that's come out thus far, just in terms of I guess star power or things of that nature, I also do have to state that Eddie Hearn's not the only person on the zone. Like Golden Boy are on there as well, and I feel for a lot of the time they also ain't really pulling their weight the way they should be. Like it looks like the whole burden of everything is kind of on Eddie Hearn, whereas Oscar De La Hoya, he has had some very fun cards, I will give him that, but in terms of, again, that star power, that name power, they just don't seem to have any of those outside of maybe like Jaime Munguia, Virgil Ortiz, and obviously Ryan Garcia, who pretty much does what he pleases at this moment in time. So yeah, I want to obviously give him some grace there, but then outside of that, I'm just thinking, I'm looking at Teofimo, I'm like, Teofimo, you've got Jermaine Ortiz on the 8th of February. Like, please focus on your assignment, because you're doing any and everything but focusing on this guy from the outside of what it appears to be. And you did a very similar thing against George Kambosos, and it nearly cost you your career, basically. You had to do a mad rebuild off the back of that, focusing on any and everything but Kambosos, or trying to focus on the bag, or trying to fight this battle, fight that battle, when you had someone in front of you that was hungry to succeed. I think I did a very similar thing before the Sandor Martin fight, when obviously he was talking about not wanting to fight Jose Ramirez and who else, the other guy that just went to Top Rank, whose name now escapes me. I'll put it in the comments. But yeah, Arnold Barboza Jr., not wanting to fight him, and was doing a bunch of talking and calling out all other names except Sandor Martin, and it ended up looking like arse in that fight. Got dropped twice, once officially, once unofficially, that the ref didn't count. All of this stuff, and just about scraped by in the skin of his teeth. Obviously then he goes and does the big Josh Taylor win, which was a great win, but like he needs to be focused at this point, because at this point in time, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm actually favouring Jermaine Ortiz to win that fight. I need to do a bit more of my analysis on the two, watch a bit more footage before that fight comes up to give my predictions or whatever. But I can say that I didn't like what was coming out of Teofimo's mouth before the Josh Taylor fight, and maybe he's just comfortable in chaos. Maybe he needs that chaos to do what he needs to do. Sonny Edwards is kind of like that sometimes. He needs to be in the mix and in the thick of the chaos to get the best out of himself. But in his biggest moment, which was obviously against Bam Rodriguez, that chaos didn't help. It helped all the other times, didn't help in this one. Now, this definitely isn't a Teofimo Lopez, deepest and greatest of moments, because that's not this challenger, but he seems to have it the other way, where in his biggest moments he seems to rise to the occasion, but he severely underperforms when it's guys that I guess he's expected to beat, just routine run of the mill. But in this instance, I just want to see the guy forget about his drama with Eddie Hearn, believing that they tried to screw him over on the zone, even though both him and George Kambosos were not signed to the zone. Their following fights had nothing to do with the zone. They was actually all on Top Rank after that. So it's like you've got into your head that the zone was trying to screw you to put a belt on Devin, quote unquote, but Devin wasn't even with the zone. He moved over again to Top Rank to go and take the belts off of George Kambosos and to clean up the mess that you made. All of that was done on the platform that you associate, but for some reason you think that the zone was screwing you for their own personal gain. It had nothing to do with them, apart from the fact you just underperformed. So I need you to not be focused on other things apart from your fight right now, because that fight is coming up thick and fast, and it is a very, very dangerous fight for you. Yeah, that's kind of where I want to leave that one. You guys leave your comments down below, let me know your opinion, if I'm way off base here, or if you agree with what I'm saying, or if you've got any other alternative opinions. I'm definitely keen to listen and hear that. But for right now, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna go shower, relax, watch the boxing. I'm gonna go watch the Royal Rumble tonight as well, and yeah, just gonna chill out. So until next time, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and that's the Hardcore Casual out.